as somebody who's been around for over 28 years, part of what makes you stick in an industry for this length of time is that level of passion for helping others and finding that be the focus of your training, be the focus of your time when you're communicating with your team, really, I think can create a great retention rate with your staff because you're showing them that passion. Hire for character and culture, don't hire for skills. You can train skills. I think when you think about hiring in our environment, we use know how to teach the skills of, how to fold a piece of laundry or how to pack an item up, right, for safety. That's what the training is for, is to teach the skills. You have to hire for character. You have to hire for how do you show up for other people? Do you want to help other people day in and day out? Do you like the idea of restoring someone's life back after a catastrophic event? Because if those don't align, even if they have all the skill sets, they won't stay very long because they're missing the meaning of the work, right? The why we do this. And if they're missing the why of what we do in the restoration industry, they're not going to stick around that long.
Hi, this is Leighton Healey, and this is another episode of the Restoration Playbook Podcast. And I'm excited to talk about another principle in our book, Winning with Workers. This principle is titled Connect Work with Meaning, something that we've not only seen at work in the workforces and the employment experiences of some of the best employers in this industry, but it is a principle that we have seen in our research is very important, and it connects deeply with the workforce today. Our guest today is Holly, and Holly is the president of FRSTeam. FRSTeam is one of the leading restoration providers of contents cleaning in the industry, and Holly stands out as someone who has done a tremendous job being able to connect work with meaning in the lives of her team. Not only is Holly a great example of how she does this in her own life and through her own career, but she has developed some systems and some methods for how she can help workers to see the meaning underneath the work that they do. And it powers and it fuels retention and excellent customer service and great interactions with each other. So let's get into it. Holly, welcome to the show. You're someone who, when I was thinking about this principle number 3, connect work with meaning, your name was front of mind. I said, we have to talk with Holly. The industry needs to hear from Holly. You're someone who I think has really found a way to infuse meaning and purpose, not only in your own work, but in the lives of your team at FRSTeam. So let me start by giving you an opportunity to introduce yourself. And I like to ask Holly, introduce yourself and tell us something about yourself that sometimes it takes a person a long time to learn this about you.
So thanks for that, Leighton. My name's Holly Murry. I'm the president of FRSTeam. I've been with FRSTeam over 28 years, so a really long time. And something that it's really hard to say like what someone wouldn't know about me. I'm kind of an open book. I talk with a lot of people. I really share my story and my journey throughout my entire career with people. I would say maybe one of the things that people may not know about me is that I sit on the board of a charity. So back in Colorado, I still play competitive slow pitch softball. I don't know if those terms really go together, but I had an amazing opportunity over 10 years ago to play with a friend of mine named Sherry Baca. And she passed away from cancer, but in her honor, we started a 501 and we run a huge charitable softball tournament every year where we have teams come out. We typically raise over $50,000 a year and give that to people who've been impacted by cancer in the local softball community in Colorado. And so maybe that's something that in the restoration field, maybe a lot of people don't know about me. But as far as work and my history, I think most people know kind of a lot of my journey and story because I really love spending time with people and getting to know people in our industry and learning from them. And so I really get an amazing opportunity to kind of share my story and learn other people's stories throughout their career, which is exciting.
Awesome. Awesome. So even in your free time, Holly, even in your free time, you're connecting, leisure and passion and volunteering with meaning. So this is a red thread that I think is stitched through your whole life.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us are impacted by things that happen throughout the course of our life. And when I was in high school, my one of my best friends at the time was diagnosed with terminal cancer at a very young age. And I think for me, that really impacted me of spending every day being able to help somebody else really brings you joy. And if you can find a career in an industry that allows you to kind of involve that in your day to day, there's no better joy in your life that I think you'll ever have. Whether it's helping my two children, trying to help my husband, helping my coworkers or my employees or my franchisees, or helping others in your community. I think that level of trying to help make the world a better place is really something that at least feeds my soul. So,
Hmm. Well, that's that comes through when we interact and you and I get to hang out. That comes through, right? It's the stuff that you're passionate about. It's like soul stuff. It's there's deep roots. I would say that some of the vibrancy, that you bring to connection and relationships. It's kind of like if Holly was a tree, you'd be like, there's some deep roots here because there's some pretty robust blossoms here, right? Like there's obviously some deep roots here. So it's fun to learn about those roots, and we're gonna go deeper. But let's start by introducing First Team. I mean, First Team is a leader in the industry. This is a large organization. Tell us about First Team.
yeah, so First Team really works in the content space. So, we started over 30 years ago as a restoration dry cleaner. So, handling all the textiles and electronics. And over the course of the 30 years, we've expanded our service offerings, but all of our facilities are full dry cleaning, laundry. They now offer electronics restoration and some level of contents restoration, whether it's couch with electronics in it, or maybe one of our restoration partners and contractors needs some extra help on a specific claim. And so
Hmm.
I used to tell people that if you think of contents, if there's a house or a commercial building and you turned it upside down and shook it, the stuff that falls out, we handle predominantly the things that fall into that category. And for us, there's over 50 locations and franchisees across the US and up into Canada as well.
Yeah, which is awesome. I mean, so what we're talking about is not just you infusing meaning into work and say your wherever you're located in the world is you're trying to amplify that value across a network of 50 locations and hundreds of technicians and so we'll talk about that because principles within the purview of your staff is one thing, but how do you scale leadership principles and then how do you enroll other leaders in your organization to care about those. So let's Anyways, my mind, I don't want to get the cart out of the horse here, but I'm interested. So what's been your journey personally? I mean, you mentioned just kind of almost flippantly, you're like, "Hey, I've been at the company for 28 years." I mean, that's a really I think that's a powerful story. So um, you're passionate about what you do, Holly, and I think you're passionate about the people that you work with. So could you reverse engineer that? And for someone, maybe even they're like a first team employee who was asked to watch this podcast to get to know the leader of the organization. But like, what was your journey, and where does like this is Holly's journey, and then this is where you start to see meaning and purpose and fulfillment really start to become an interwoven part of how you work.
Yeah, so I would say for me that the finding meaning at First Team started from the day I was interviewed. So, one of my ex business partners, Courtney Nicholas, who has since retired out of First Team, was who I interviewed with over 28 years ago to be an employee. And at the time, I was interviewing for a technician position, right? To go out, pack up people's clothing and belongings and their sentimental items and bring them back and inventory and clean them. And I remember even in the interview process with Courtney thinking I called my dad that day on the way home, and I'm 22 years old at the time and so excited. I think I found my first job post college. I interviewed with this amazing human, and I'm going to get to help people and restore their home and their lives after this tragedy. And I remember my dad, he was a bit of a pessimist, thinking like, well, maybe they won't pay you when you're on the road or when you're driving. And but just I think that came across in the interview. And so my journey started there, really at the bottom of first team or the lowest position available, right? As a technician, doing the cleaning of people's shoes or their items, packing them out. And throughout the course of my 28 years, I like to think that I've held every position in the company. So, and again, I think it kind of always revolved around helping people. So, when you start out as a technician, I got an opportunity, right, to advance my career by helping other departments. And so, if the dry cleaning side of our business got backed up, maybe I would come in an hour early every day and press shirts and then learn a new skill set. The billing department maybe got backed up at one point, and so I learned and helped to learn and understand how to do estimates in the pricing platform, and I would say that that really catered my path or kind of outlined my path within the company, where with each new learned opportunity to help another department or help another office, I was able to move up and kind of advance within the company. And then I moved to the ownership side when we opened a location in Colorado. I joined the ownership team at that point back in 98, I believe that was, so a really long time ago. And then me and my partners franchised the business in 2006. And so there's something really thrilling and exciting when you get to help departments or other people learn a new skill set. Because I would say then as you move into leadership, it gave me an opportunity to then be the leaders that helped me learn new skill sets. And we get to pass on that to like the next generation.
Yeah, very and I'm curious when you if you could go back to your, day 1 self and tell you that, "Hey, one day you're gonna be leading this organization, and it's gonna be coast to coast," do you think you would have believed that?
No. I would have there are still days today, Leighton, that I wake up and think that I am incredibly blessed, um, both through my career and my history and my path. But I don't think I ever would have believed. I think there's a part of you that thinks I'll advance and maybe not be in the seat that I'm in today. But I don't know that I ever had the forworth or thought process that at some point I'd be sitting in the president's role. I think there's still days today that I am like, "Wow, when did that happen? How did that happen?"
Yeah, that'd be I mean, who knows? Maybe technology will give us that opportunity one day, but for now, it's just kind of a fun it's just a fun kind of thought experiment, but now, do you think that there's anything unique about because you made a comment earlier, and I thought it was just a great picture into the industry. You said, I started and I was cleaning people's shoes and I was cleaning, their textiles, and I think that's a great example of really just how hands-on and let's call it like elemental, these industries are, and how, for lack of a better word, intimately you become with a customer's precious belongings. Do you think that there's do you think that are there characteristics of this industry that you think make it a good environment to find meaning and find fulfillment, like when compared to other industries? Like, do you think there's anything unique about your industry that just creates opportunities to find fulfillment?
Yeah, I think we probably are in one of the very there's a handful of industries where you really get to provide amazing kind of fulfillment, right? And you really get to feel the helping others perspective. So when you walk into a disaster and
Mhm.
their home is a mess, their items are a mess, and they're dealing with the tragedy. And some of those tragedies can even be loss of life or loss of family. And I think you get this amazing opportunity. I used to say we get to be there at potentially what is one of their worst days and also then get to be there at one of their best days, right? Because then you also typically get to be there at the end when if you work in the construction side, right, you get to help them rebuild their house. And I think for us, when you think about belongings and people's items, there's a huge level of sentimental attachment, whether it's a wedding dress or maybe a flag that belonged to their great great grandfather or a child's stuffed animal, something that has meaning, or their blankie that you get to bring back to life. And there's something really amazing when at the beginning of a claim, they may feel like everything is lost. And so to be able to restore that, we say restore lives, and you hear that used within our industry a lot. And there is a
Yeah.
lot of truth to that.
Yeah. What have you found to be some effective approaches to communicating and frankly spotlighting like that unique characteristic of the industry to candidates? One of the stats that we found in some of our research, Holly, is that 67% of people coming into the industry today come from no general construction background, meaning they're coming in and they didn't come from like a they didn't nab them from my competitors. They were in retail, or they were in food, or they were in hospitality, and they kind of just found their way into the industry. Probably the most primary sources through referrals. So their cousin referred them in, and now they're here. How have you been able to communicate the meaning that you've discovered in the industry to applicants and to new people?
Yeah, so I think when you're think about interviewing, I think it's great. You should always go over what your company mission is, right? And does that really tell them about the ability to help others? And whether it's somebody in your HR department that's doing an interview, whether it's yourself, are you really communicating them the wins or opportunities to really help people within the industry? I would say that from a outward perspective, I think most of us deal with just recruiting as a whole. And so when you're thinking about recruiting, what does your brand image look like in the environment? And this is an area that I think the restoration industry in particular could really use some work. Is that, oftentimes when we go out on a home, most people are like, oh, I didn't even realize this type of company or business existed. And I will say that you're seeing more advertisements or social media posts, right? Where you can see that we're really trying to appeal to that connection or the meaning of the work versus the dirty side of our industry and the dirty side of the work, and really focusing on whether it's before and after pictures. We coined something many moons ago about goosebump moments, and finding when you go out with the homeowner, asking them what's the most important thing in your home, and do you have something that's sentimental? And that's part of the training procedure, right? And maybe it's something that has been passed down from generation, how you treat those items or belongings, how you present them at the end of the claim, how you communicate. I think that gives your staff and your workers immense joy and I can see it, right? That when I'm talking to our field team out in the field, and they get to share a goosebump moment about, hey, we found out that this, christening gown belonged to their great grandmother and it was in a bag shoved up on the top of a closet. And when we pulled it down, it looked important. So we asked the homeowner, and then we put it, in like a shadow frame and made a big deal about delivering it. It was the first thing off the truck. And it really does give you like goosebumps when you get to see that type of emotional reaction. And that's where I feel like we in restoration really have that ability to give that level of connection, of restoring back the items in the house and the things that mean the most to them.
Beautiful. So a goosebump moment, you can't just engineer it, right? It's something where clearly a person has to bring some curiosity to the table, have some empathy, identify that, that something, in a sense has the makings of a goosebump making, item, and then probably finding an appropriate way, of asking, understanding that you're probably holding something very precious, and then being able to, probably just be present for a story or some tears or is that am I in the right
You
train of thought?
definitely are. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we coined it the first 15, right? Go get it.
Mm.
Go figure, right? First team, the first 15. And the
Yeah, yeah.
first
It's good.
15 minutes of the claim, right, are checking in and asking them if they're okay, right?
Mm,
And then asking them about their belongings or their home, or, that you have to connect with them on a level that shows how much you really care about them, to
mm,
then learn about the items that are really important in their life. And
mhm,
sometimes, because they're going through a tragedy, it does require you to maybe ask some key questions, because they
mm,
may not, right? I'm over 50, so I forget stuff all the time. And so you would have to almost remind me of certain things, right? And say, "Hey, do you have any quilts or stuffed animals or m- soft good memorabilia that means a lot to you? Or maybe it's artwork, that it is really important to you." And I think when you start asking those questions and you walk a home and you walk room by room with someone on the rooms that have been affected, you get an opportunity to really kind of discover their items that are important to them.
yeah. I mean, I mean, as you're talking, I mean, I can think of stuff in my house, Holly, where, I just gives me, I guess the opposite of goosebumps would be like maybe heartburn about just like, oh man, can you imagine just someone coming in and just packing the stuff out and be like, hey, where's X, Y, or Z? And they say, oh, I thought it was just stuff. You're like, no, that stuff means a lot to me, right? And but when somebody treats it with respect and with dignity, um, I would think that it makes it much easier for me to go along with their recommendations, their instructions, like sounds like it's a bridge towards other aspects of the job that, may be more difficult or, probably build some trust is what I'm getting the vibe.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so important for us to build trust with the homeowner, and I think,
Mhm.
I say this all the time, but no one really will ever care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that speaks volumes in our industry, because, whether you have, you know, they don't maybe care about the cleaning technologies that we're going to implement for the cleaning and restoration of their items, but they are going to care that the one sentimental item or handful of items are treated with the utmost care, and that even if they're total loss, they're not going to get thrown away, that these are items that we value as much as they value at that moment as you're handling their belongings throughout their house.
Yeah. That's great. It's hard for me not to think about things in my life that matter and how the difference it would make. I can just even think about I've got young kids and just think about it doesn't take long for a human to assign like almost almost an illogical amount of value to an item. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I mean, like I'm talking like it takes what like just months, and a connection can form to a possession that really is not it's not logical. It is emotional in it, and especially when there's a long history with that object. So that's really interesting. Well, let me put some data in front of you, and
Yeah.
I love to get your reaction to it. Because you have a unique purview and you've got a unique and very relevant leadership style. So in the book Winning with Workers, we really do a lot of exhaustive digging to try to understand what's going on with the workforce today, because you lead a very multi-generational workforce, Holly. But I think that you and I both know that the workers who are coming in, these workers who we'd refer to as Gen Z, these are workers who, I guess, from working years, they're about 18 to 24, and they're different. They're different. Um, so one of the things that we've learned from our data is that 45% of Gen Zs find that the most fulfilling part of their job is working with others. And so that community component, that team culture component is really big to them. And I think back to this kind of goosebumps item that you had in mind. And how do you think about um, infusing meaning and goosebump moments in a team setting? Because it seems like there's a compound effect opportunity there.
There is. I think it's important, right, that we're sharing the stories, right? And so we've done everything from, if you run a field team of one or if you run a field team of 100, you can create, in essence, competitions on who's going to get earn the best goosebump moment this month from an insured. And you can even tie financial compensation to that, right? It allows them to focus on it. As a mom of an 18-year-old, I would say that maybe I have a very interesting perspective on that. That I do think that how the environment that they work in is really important. They need to really feel almost loved, I guess is the term I would use, right? That their opinion matters. And I think how you interact with your incoming staff, if somebody's been on the job for 30 days or 60 days and they're in that younger generation and you say, hey, let's spend 30 minutes and then I want your opinion on areas maybe that you think we could be doing something better or different, it shows them how much value that you put in their opinion. It makes them feel like they're now contributing to the business's success, their own success, and even their coworkers' success, right? And I think the more you can communicate and share the stories or the goosebump moments and encourage them through training platforms like Know How, right? You can use that as a way for them to understand this is our goal, right? Our goal is to have you be an extremely satisfied employee while working here. That if you have goals that you want to entertain, we can focus the training around that. Similar, I mean, I went after it when I was younger. I think the younger generation wants it offered more than pursued. And so with my son, right, he wants to know through whether it's a social media platform, right? You can even have like a friends group on Snapchat or TikTok or whatever the younger generation's newest social media is. But you could create a channel for so that they could work with each other in multiple locations or across the industry to talk about, hey, I had this amazing opportunity. Um, I got to deliver this item back. The homeowner there's something about that that you really can't replace. And it will draw the workers thinking, gosh, I want that type of job that I can deliver that level of satisfaction and happiness to an insured.
Have you found any methods of not to strip the humanity out of it, but like leveraging that to drive referrals from your staff's networks or awareness to potential applicants? Like, is there anything that you found effective that doesn't take away from, let's call it like the tenderness of the moment and the authenticity of the moment, but like there is a powerful promotional um, effect to what you're describing.
Yeah, I think sharing
Hmm.
stories is so critical, right? Whether you're
Yeah.
doing that through a monthly newsletter within your company, whether you're doing it through maybe social media posts, whether you
Hmm.
have an intranet that maybe you share those amazing opportunities with, whether
Hmm.
you're utilizing maybe things like RIA where you get together
Hmm.
and you get to share some of those amazing opportunities that we get, just
Hmm.
really utilizing all of that. And I would say, we use every one of those systems as best as we can. And
Yeah.
from before and after pictures, right? If
Yeah.
somebody just did it was like a leather military jacket that belonged to their great grandfather, had been in a basement and water damage for 100 years. It was really in bad shape. And the office took it, right? Really spent some extra time restoring it. They put it and then we push that story out. And I
Yeah.
think when we're looking to attract talent and
Hmm.
knowing that winning workers today, right, is about connecting meaning. You've really got
Hmm.
to share that meaning
Yeah.
internally and externally, right? So if the person that is folding laundry at your facility, how do they know, right? Do you
Yeah.
involve them when these goosebump moments come in so that they
Mm.
can then be a part of it? And then after the delivery, do you share
Hmm.
that back to your team at your monthly meeting or weekly meeting to say,
Yeah.
hey, I know a lot of you worked on this job, wanted to share this amazing story, or if
Yeah.
it's a thank you card or a survey, a great survey that came back that talked about the care that you took of their belongings, the
Mm,
more you can share that with everyone in the company, they then can feed off of that same kind of amazing feeling that you get when you know that you're helping others. Because it's hard to explain to somebody who cleans shoes all day that they're helping others, right?
yeah.
Um, Maybe they don't see it that way, right? They just think, hey, I clean shoes. And so I
Yeah.
think it's important to share those types of stories that, hey, we took care of their belongings. They're so happy.
Hmm.
And how you share those back to your internal team will then attract internal referrals, which
Hmm.
is a huge piece in the data that you share where people are coming to us from within the industry.
Yeah. Super, super important, and very well said. In your industry like yours, you have, you obviously have to collect all the items, and then the items have to be brought back to a facility, and then facility has to be cleaned, and items have to be returned, and projects have to be managed, and it truly takes, I guess you could almost say it takes a village to create a goosebumps moment. You know what I mean? It's like, but the I guess that's an interesting challenge. I don't think about that enough. Is how do you provide like contextual awareness of how your piece contributes to that moment? And that's interesting because I could see how the person who's either, finding the jacket or ideally returning the jacket, has this almost outsized advantage to be able to, in terms of like goosebumps proximity, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Whereas what you're saying is, no, no, you have to find a way to include others in that experience so that it has the full beneficial, uplifting, almost like a, lift all boats kind of experience. Can you get a little more tangible about that? So if someone's listening to this and I say, that's interesting. You know what? I definitely have people in my contents department. I definitely have people in the, back in the back office who deal with AR and AP or something like that.
Mhm.
And they're hearing stories about, some job that we just help someone in such a meaningful way. How do you tactically include everybody and help them understand the contribution that their portion makes to that experience? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think the first is sharing the story.
Mm,
I thought about this a little bit when you think about you get a great survey, right, from a homeowner
mm,
who you had an amazing goosebump moment. They send pictures of the stuffed animal being given to their child who's just ecstatic, right? And I think about what happens with that. And sales and marketing did a phenomenal job of probably sharing that story with our contractor or carrier partner, right? Like, hey, look at how happy we made your insured. But are you sharing it back internally, right? So
right.
are you bringing it back to the team? And I think that's probably the biggest thing that people sometimes forget is
Mm,
circling back. So if I could give
mhm,
an operator one really strong piece of advice, it's
mm,
when you get these amazing moments, make
mm,
sure that you are recognizing everyone on the team
mm.
as someone who contributed to that,
Yeah.
right? Because if they don't do their job and they don't work there, they then it the circle isn't complete, right?
Yeah.
That we need everyone to kind of do their part to be able
Mm,
to fulfill these types of goosebump moments and amazing opportunities to help someone and restore their life. And
mhm,
they're all a piece of that and making sure that they feel inclusive in that
mhm,
discussion, inclusive in that meeting. You know,
mhm.
maybe you forgot to include your AR department because they don't typically join the
Yeah.
team meeting, right? They sit in the office in the back and they just do billings. So
Yeah.
I think that's the leadership's job to make sure that you're really sharing those out internally to your internal clients, um, all of your staff, because they're all a piece of the success of the business and they're all a
Yeah.
piece of making that happen.
Yeah. You know what, Holly, as you were talking, I just remembered is that you and I, we were in our most recent conversation, we were talking about books that we were reading. And then do you know what you did? I think to me this is good because this is like, like there's always like the BS test on like leaders. It's like, did they really? And actually, I remember you saying like distinctly. I remember you saying like you're about to tell a story and said, "Oh, I just got goosebumps." And then you told this story about, we were swapping, swapping experiences and whatnot. But I don't know if you remember that, but like, anyways, we're standing by the escalator, and you said, "Oh, I just got goosebumps." And but at the end of the day, I'm like, "Oh, I got to actually participate in like a first team goosebumps moment," And actually, I remember it distinctly because it's like you highlighted it, and it like piqued my attention, and I kinda leaned in. I was like, "Well, this is gonna be good, so, okay, I'm interested," right? So, I think that I don't know if you remember that, but
Yeah.
I distinctly remember that.
I wanna be sarcastic and be like, "It was kinda late at night. There were a lot of cocktails flowing at the reception," but, no,
No,
I
yeah,
do, and I think that's
yeah,
important, right? Like, and that's, I think, the piece that we sometimes forget
yeah,
to share is
yeah,
the employee gets to be front facing, right? The
yeah,
field person who literally is hand delivering the item
mm,
and maybe even recognized and discovered the item on the front end.
mm,
And I think whether it's the military jacket or the flag, right, that was passed down. I mean, I shared tears with some of our homeowners
mm,
over the years where I showed up at a delivery many moons ago. I don't do a lot of pickups and deliveries anymore, but
mhm,
the homeowner answered the door. She was a little distraught, and I had her sit down. She had me call her doctor. She was having a stroke.
mhm,
Somebody was looking after her that day and just happened to have me show up at a delivery, right time, right place.
mhm,
And she was okay, right? And
mhm,
I think, like, not a goosebump moment with her clothing, but a goosebump moment with who she was. And I think when you
yeah,
share those stories about, hey, we get these amazing opportunities to really positively impact the people that we interact with every
mhm,
day, when you
mhm,
share them back, right, they
mhm,
do bring a goosebump moment. Uh,
mhm,
one of the books is the Apple Experience. There's like
yeah,
3 pages in there, and they wrote about some of the goosebump moments at First Team. And I think same
uh,
type of theory is
yeah,
if you can share those moments within your own organization, those,
yeah,
you know, it does give everyone, they know that we made this happen and that
mhm,
we are all a part of that. And I
mm,
think that really, when you can share that, you can see it. It really does lift the spirit of your office. People get really excited,
mhm,
and they almost like then will start seeking out, right? Those
yeah,
opportunities again on the next
yeah,
claim, right?
yeah,
Whether it's the child, I had a employee once who the child lost their very favorite stuffed animal, and it was
yeah,
non-salvageable. It was
mm,
not going to be restored, but we
mm,
took it, right, in the hopes that we would be able to restore it. Well, my employee went after hours, went to the Build-A-Bear, got a replacement bear that was identical, had it
wow,
made, and then delivered it back. And I think when I think about that, right, it gives me goosebumps. And I didn't
yeah,
do that. I didn't make it happen. The employee did. And I think
yeah,
the more we can kind of share those amazing restoration experiences, the
yeah,
more that your staff and your team will feel that, right? They'll be like,
mhm,
"Wow, that's amazing." And you get goosebumps when you hear these incredible restoring of people's lives and their items
mhm.
and being able to share those.
What do you think about, I don't wanna take away from the let's call it just the beauty and the humanity of it, but there's like this dopamine moment that has tangible value. Um, I think that it's a fair question is, um, how you believe that. What have been some ways that you have helped leaders and managers that have influence in your organization that, maybe you've had to help them to become an extension of this or to get them more excited about what it is that you're talking about right now? Like how do you enroll a leader in in fostering more meaning in their team or more connection between the work the team does and the meaning? Like, how have you found like how have you enrolled leaders that maybe even reluctant leaders? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, right, first of all, you hire for the traits that you're looking for in
Sure.
a leader,
Mhm.
right? And so I think you don't maybe experience as many people who are that far from the desire to help people. In fact, I tell
Mhm.
people all the time is if during the interview you get the feeling that this person doesn't really enjoy helping others, we shouldn't hire them.
Yeah.
They're just
No.
they're not going to be the right fit for us. And I
Right.
think that's like the step one. I would say as a leader, right? I think it's important when you think about how we train and how
Mhm.
we support the people that directly report to us. I think it goes
Mhm.
back to how you communicate. So if
Mhm.
every time I pick up the phone, I ask about goosebump moments and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, have you had any good goosebump moments?" Then that's really asking them to look for those opportunities, right? But
Mhm.
if every time I pick up the phone, I talk to the leader and say, "Hey, I noticed our labor percentage is higher than it should be. What's going on with that?"
Yes.
That's the answer you're going to kind of get. And so when you
Mhm.
think about like your training and your focus, for me, you need to ask and prioritize whatever the things you feel like are most beneficial to you as a company. And
Mhm.
if the biggest challenge is retention and staff, we know from the data that to win over those workers and to retain those employees, we need to give them meaning. So that should be one of your rocks, right?
Yeah.
And if anybody follows Gino Wickman with the entrepreneurial operating system,
Yeah.
one of the things he talks about, and this is an old, everyone has seen it, right? You have a jar, you've got rocks, you've got pebbles, you've got sand, and you've got water. And
Yeah.
if you put the pebbles and the sand in first, the rocks don't matter. So
Yeah.
I do think it's so important that when you think about what you
Mhm.
train on and what you prioritize, you've got to make the
Mhm.
rocks those meaningful efforts if that's
Yeah.
the key to your location success in
Mhm.
retention and keeping and engaging your staff.
Mhm. Yeah. No, it's I remember that visual and, and I think, I've tended to associate with, like, priorities, in, like, tangible, tactical calendar events, but not in the sense that, look, as a leader, you don't have a lot of, let's call it face-to-face time or voice-to-voice time or, or whatever, right? Emoji to emoji time, right? But but so you have to choose, like, what are the rocks in this conversation? And what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is, um, you have to think about what are the things you check in on, what are the things you ask about, where in a sense downstream of that response is health and vitality, in that team. Is that fair?
Oh, 100%,
Yeah.
right? I think
Yeah.
when and recognizing if somebody's health and vitality isn't
Mm.
where it normally is. I think
Yeah.
it's really important at whatever I'm out on the road today. I'm out in one of our offices in California. One of the employees came in this morning, and you can tell by the demeanor, right, that they're already off to a bad start. And so I think it's
Mm.
important to take a pause and pull an employee aside and be like, "Hey, is everything okay? Something seems to be bothering you." Like you need
Mm.
to really care and pay attention to your employees if you want
Mhm.
them to care and pay attention to your
Yeah.
clients. And
Yeah.
I think that's so critical. And, just checking in. And the first question shouldn't be like, "Hey, you're 2 minutes late." It should be, "Hey, I noticed that you don't seem yourself. What's going on?" Right. And I
Mhm.
think checking in on your staff and checking on your employees is
Mm.
so important to let them know that you care about them as a human. I've had lots of tragedy strike an employee or even myself. And I think, we don't really ever know what happened to somebody on their way to work. And so
Mhm.
when they get to work, what are they greeted with? What
Mm.
happens when they walk in the door? Is it
Mm.
that you're looking at your watch and questioning why maybe they're a minute or two late? Or
Mhm.
are you, saying, good morning, hope you had a good night, right? How are things? If it's Monday, how was your weekend?
Yeah.
Did you do anything fun? Taking the
Yeah.
time to get to know your staff, right? Do they have kids? Do they have dogs? What are the important things in their life?
Yeah.
I've had an amazing opportunity to work with a lot of our team for a very long time.
Yeah.
I saw one of our employees the other day that's been with the company 27 years. She started a
Wow.
year after I did.
Yeah.
And when I see her, the first question I ask her is, how are you? How are your kids? Right? How's life? Not, hey, did you get this job finished on time? I think those are the important things that as a leader, you need to do. And if as
Yeah.
a leader, it's not your strong suit, because I think that's a reality too, then
Mm.
put it in your calendar. And I know that sounds
Yeah.
crazy, but sometimes we need reminders, right,
Yeah.
to do a better job. And so if you're watching this and you think, gosh, I really need to get better at one of these soft skills or winning over my workers through this,
Mm.
I'm a big calendar fan. I think most
Mhm.
people that run organizations live in a calendar. So set yourself a reminder every Monday, walk around and recognize one person from last week that did a phenomenal job, or,
Yeah.
share one goosebump moment every Friday, or,
Yeah.
company wide. That think about the different ways that you can share some of this amazing opportunity to really connect them with the fact that we're helping people and restoring their lives.
Yeah. I think it's very practical, and I think that I think a person would lose an opportunity if they said, "Well, Holly's just a very um, glass half full kind of person," and I think you are, but at the same time, I remember we were having a conversation once, and you said, "Yeah, like yes, I'm positive, and I have a very full life, and so I literally have a block in my day on Monday mornings, and it
I
says,
do.
do this action, you know, that recognizes people, and because you're human, right? You're human, and I think it also encourages something that I'm sure you've seen over your 28 years, which is just the compound returns over doing this over a long period of time. Is that fair?
100%. I think
Mhm.
the more that you
Mhm.
can kind of get into a habit of doing something over and over again, it becomes right
Mhm.
intertwined with your culture.
Mhm.
And I think it encourages your team and your fellow leaders to do the same. Right.
Mhm.
So, I think it's that whole, um, gosh, there was a great movie and now I'm going to space on what it was called, but Pay It Forward. Thank you.
Yeah.
I knew it would
Mhm.
dawn on me, right?
Mhm.
I think some of us have been to Starbucks and found out that the person in front of you bought their Starbucks order, right? Or you've seen that momentum of pay it forward. So I think of that more from a business perspective of if you are recognizing your team for their
Mhm.
successes and you're
Mhm.
focusing on these goosebump moments and delivering meaning to our industry and lives, and you do
Mhm.
it over and over again, then I think, it becomes a pattern. It gets inwoven in your culture and
Mhm.
everyone starts to do it, right? We tend to
Mhm.
attract that kind of like, kind, and quality. So
Yeah.
if everybody is honest to a fault,
Mhm.
then that's ingrained in your culture. If
Mhm.
everybody appreciates each other and shows gratitude, that can get
Mhm.
entwined in your culture.
Mhm.
And I think for me, that's not always easy to do. And
Yeah.
work gets in the way, I always say, to
Mhm.
building a great culture. So
Mhm.
for most of us, Monday morning comes and there are about a million things that happen from Friday to Monday that
Yeah.
need what may feel like your immediate attention.
Mhm.
But instead of doing that, take 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and because that is part of your rocks, what's important
Mhm.
to you, focus on that first. And then you
Mhm.
can get into, checking your 400 emails that came in over the weekend. But I
Yeah.
think that, how you prioritize that or how you set that aside
mhm,
is really important. And at least for me, and again, it's probably because I'm over 50, but I think you're right. I'm an extremely positive person. I love helping
mhm,
others, but even I can get stuck in the minutia of day in and day
mhm,
out work, and
yeah,
I will forget. So
yeah,
it's not that I don't feel it and I want to tell everyone how amazing they are because I do. I just, gosh, I got landed with emails or, maybe there was an urgent matter that needed my attention.
mhm,
Maybe AR called and, somebody decided not to pay us for work that we did, whatever it is
yeah,
that then kind of becomes the focus. It's good to remind yourself because it actually gives you joy, right? Because
mhm,
when you show gratitude to others, you feel more joy than that.
yeah, 100%. Let me ask you something that as you were talking, it came to my mind. I was like, "Well, if you're doing a lot of the things that Holly's describing, um, you're gonna start to experience longer tenures in your staff, longer retention." And then what came to mind, a friend of mine sent me a copy of his book, and there's this portion of it that stood out to me, and he said, "One of the toughest things, is helping high performers become facilitators of high performers, because oftentimes a lot of our identity becomes connected to being the person that got all the high fives or the high flyer or the employee of the month or whatever, and then to go from the employee of the month to a person who has the most employees of the month on their team. That's actually a pretty substantial change. And so I'm just as you're talking about this goosebump effects, which I just think it's such a great example of frankly, it's a great example of our first principle, which is build a weird culture. And it's definitely unique to your team. And I think I could just see people at first team being like, it's just how we do things around here. Right. I think it's such a textbook example of culture building. So kudos. But I guess I'm just thinking how you help an emerging leader in your company become someone who's willing to live vicariously through the goosebumps generated by their team members and not need that themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I would say that's hard, right? Because
Hmm.
I we promote from within often. I think a lot
Hmm.
of restoration companies really you find somebody who's great at doing and now you want them great at leading,
Hmm.
right? And those are can be different skill sets. Because if
Hmm.
I'm really great about servicing a customer and getting these amazing goosebump moments, and now I need to lead someone else to go do that, I think it's a little bit of a change in how they view the goosebump,
Hmm.
right? And I think the difference is it's still getting the goosebump, but the goosebump is the employee.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yep.
right, instead of it being the
Hmm.
homeowner whose
Hmm.
belongings we restored, it's the person,
Yeah.
right? So I I try and emphasize there's no greater joy as you move up within a leadership position in seeing the employees that work under
Yeah.
you reach levels of success that they didn't think possible.
Yeah.
And I used to say whether it's they bought their first house because they're in a different position and maybe they've worked themselves up into a management position, you're just getting to see them succeed. And then I think the
Hmm.
second piece of that is supporting them with the skills that they need,
Hmm.
whether it's through online training, whether it's
Hmm.
through a seminar training, getting them involved and giving them the tools that they're going to need with
Hmm.
truth and honest feedback, you can
Hmm.
really develop the next great leaders. But you
Yeah.
can only do that with guidance. And most of
Hmm.
us had help somewhere along the way from someone that we mentored and
Hmm.
who helped us achieve. And so I
Hmm.
think it's always important for them to look, okay, you're phenomenal at this, but now
Hmm.
I want you to help train and teach that next generation to be phenomenal at this because you're so good
Hmm.
at it, right? You can help them. And then I think it's the same sharing technique, right? When they get one, they share it up, they share it down, they share it outward.
Hmm.
I don't get every goosebump moment, right? But I definitely feel the
Yeah.
goosebumps when someone else gets it.
Yeah.
And I think as a manager, there's a lot that can be said about seeing someone that you trained, that you helped develop their skill set, reach those levels of success and get those, goosebump moments all over again.
Yeah. It's yeah. I think that is a really that's a very helpful way of thinking about it. Based on what you're saying, going back to this statement, it's like, how do you help a high performer to become a facilitator of high performers? It's really about, yeah, what you're saying is how do you take someone who has just become totally bought in to creating and experiencing goosebump moments, to shifting that desire to experiencing those moments, um, just through the experiences of their teams, and so it's not that you're like don't get to have it. It's in a sense it's like the source and the catalyst of the moment shifts, and let me ask you this, because you've worked in every role in that company. Um, do you think that do you think which do you think, like, I'm coming up with a term here, goosebumps moment. There's the goose there's the goosebumps quota, or the goosebumps. Let's call it the density of the goosebump moment, right? But do you, in your experience, which offers more goosebumps? Just to run with it, right? Is it the customer, or is it the collection of staff who your staff collectively got to share in an experience, and you're experiencing the meaning and the fulfillment of seeing the fact that you facilitated an employment experience that creates these moments for people. What do you think?
Yeah. So for me, right, I think when we get to share joy and
Yeah.
gratitude, the more you
Hmm.
get to share that with, the better. And
Yeah.
so a goosebump moment is typically between, right, the homeowner, right, who's
Hmm.
experiencing this moment of getting something restored
Hmm.
and back that they maybe thought they weren't going to get.
Hmm.
And the sense of joy that they get from
Hmm.
having this very meaningful item returned.
Yeah.
The employee that gets to deliver that, right, gets to share that experience, but it's one
Mhm.
on one.
Mhm.
When you then get to share that experience, right,
Mhm.
it's like saying you plan a, I'm a big sports person, right? So you plan a team.
Mhm.
And when the team wins the Super Bowl,
Mhm.
does only the quarterback get to share in that joy, or does the
Yeah.
whole team get to
Yeah.
share in that success?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
No. Yeah.
when I think of leaders, right, you may not have been the person that threw the winning touchdown,
Mhm.
but you likely are the person that maybe blocked or, you
Mhm.
know, I'm terrible. Now I'm going to try and start using football metaphors, and that's not going to work out well. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
were you the
Yeah.
guy that blocked?
But I even see the water boys celebrating.
Yes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, because you're part of the
Yeah.
team. And
Yeah.
I think for me, I think the collective celebration of our successes,
Yeah.
you're impacting more people.
Yeah.
And to me, the
Mm.
joy multiplies with every person that you get to celebrate that joy with. So
Mm.
if I only get to celebrate with just the homeowner, right?
Mhm.
It's limited. It's a
Yeah.
limited joy. But when we get to
Yeah.
share it across the whole organization, or as a leader, you get to share that with everyone, there's just a greater level of
Mhm.
joy.
Yeah. I can just picture a conversation with a high performing worker, and just taking them aside and say, "Hey, that story you told was awesome." And l- I just want to encourage you that next time you tell a story, just picture this. Every time you said "I," what would it be like if you said "we," right? And they
Yeah.
said, "Oh, I never thought about that before." It's like, because I appreciate that you really take ownership of your work and you care about your customers. But maybe even unconsciously, you've grown accustomed to saying "I." Like, another thing that I did that really resonated with the customer, another thing I did, "Oh, and then I said this." It's like, what would it look like if we just told that story next time you said another thing that we did for this customer? And and say, test drive it and see what happens. And I agree with you. I think that they'll come back and they'll say, yeah, the fireworks were bigger.
I mean, think of
No.
it. I even see like if I have a sales and marketing
Mhm,
person, right, who
mhm,
finally gets an opportunity with one of our
mhm,
contractor clients that maybe they've been
mhm,
working on building that relationship for a long time, right? They
mhm,
go by there multiple times, right? This is someone that they've heavily stalked for a long period of time to win an opportunity to service their homeowners. And they finally get that opportunity and we knock it out of the park. I encourage my sales team, hey, why don't you bring in breakfast or something to lunch on Tuesday and share with the team, hey, we finally landed the ABC account and it's because of everything that you guys did on this first opportunity that is really giving us an opportunity again.
mhm,
And just saying thank you
mhm,
to your fellow team members. And it makes
mhm,
me think about when my sales team does that, not
mhm,
only does the internal team feel appreciated for their involvement in our success,
mhm,
but I actually think the salesperson gets as
mhm,
much joy out of that because you
mhm,
feel that when you communicate with someone, when you're, it's like has anyone ever given you a random compliment, right? Whether
mhm,
it's, gosh, I really like your sweater or your
mhm,
hair looks great today, or
mhm,
hey, I noticed I saw you interacting with your child and you're
mhm.
doing a great job at parenting, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes when those things happen and they
Mhm.
don't happen all the time or very
Yeah.
often, as
Yeah.
the recipient of the thank you or the notice of you doing something great,
Mhm.
there is something that happens with dopamine and the whole bit that makes you feel like, wow, that's awesome, right? Because we work really hard day in and day out. We
Mhm.
we don't get everything recognized as we do it. So if you
Mhm.
can take a few minutes and really recognize someone else on your team for doing something right instead of
Mhm.
trying to find them doing something wrong, you'll change the culture. You'll give people that same interaction. Like when we were talking about winning with workers, right?
Mhm.
I think the other big statistic we get is that they like working with others.
Yeah.
Well, we like
Big
working
time.
with others when the others are fun to work with, right? Or appreciative, or you recognize it's the same thought process. You've got to be able to
Mhm.
create that same culture by
Mhm.
doing it on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah, very well said. I've experienced both sides of that, and there's a lot of intentionality in obviously what you're doing to create an environment that facilitates that and promotes that. Let me let me put something in front of you that we've found in the conversations we've had and the companies we've spent time researching seems to be a very effective tactic, and I wonder how you think about it. And it's something we refer to as reframing. Reframing. It's not a unique concept, but it's built around this idea that the same work task can be described in two ways. In a negative way, and that really offers very little opportunity for connecting meaning and fulfillment. But then as well, a way that is rich with meaning and fulfillment. And sometimes an example that I would give is, okay, Holly, I know it's 8 o'clock and I know it's Friday. I don't want to hear it. Okay. But we're going up to 35th. Yes. 35th is on that side of town. And we got to get under this person's house. And it's a mess. Yeah. It's a mess. Okay. It's going to stink. Okay. And we're going to get all this stuff. And I don't want to hear any complaints about it. And then we'll get back to our Saturday. Okay. So any complaints? I don't want to hear it. Zip it. It's Friday night for me too. Or, right. Or the same jobs as, hey, look, I know it's 8 o'clock at night, but it's also 8 o'clock at night for Mr. and Mrs. Malcolm. I want to tell you about this couple. They've lived in this house for nearly 40 years, and this couple's been married for 30 of those 40 years. And here's what happened: their sewage backed up, and they were redoing the floors, and they made the mistake of moving all their belongings into the crawl space, and it's not looking good. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to get over there and we're going to make sure that all their belongings very carefully get taken out, get placed in the vehicle, and we're going to show them that even though it stinks, that you can still help someone with a smile. How's everybody feeling? Same situation. You know what I'm saying? What do what do you think about, reframing? And does that fit into your model?
It does. It definitely fits. I think it fits into all of our model, right? Because
Hmm.
it's really about changing how we view it. And
Hmm.
our leadership team just recently did an emotional intelligence training that was like 16 weeks long, and you had to check in with how you were feeling each day. And emotional intelligence sometimes is about reframing how we view things and how we feel about things. And I think similar to our industry, right? How we view the opportunity to help someone versus how we view work. And, I certainly didn't graduate. I certainly didn't think I was going to take a career in cleaning people's dirty clothing, right? That wasn't a career path I chose, or at least it wasn't one I thought I was going to choose. But the framing that I received wasn't about, hey, you're going to go into these nasty homes and there's soot and water damage and raw sewage, and you're going to truck through it and it's going to be disgusting. And you know, that wasn't the frame job, right? The frame job was, hey, we got to go out and help people who've had this devastation in their home. And we get to help make this better for them, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's through
Mhm.
the restoration of their property, the restoration of their belongings, right? We
Mhm.
get to be there for them at a time
Mhm.
that they need us.
Mhm.
And we get to be the superhero in the story,
Mhm.
right? Not the villain. And I think that means something to people, right? That, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
get to go help somebody. And I think
Yeah.
the way that you said that, Leighton, was perfect because I think, yeah, it's Friday afternoon. I had plans with my whatever that night, right? And
Yeah.
my significant other, and or maybe I was
Yeah.
taking my kids somewhere. And now all of a sudden, because we work in emergency services, I'm not going to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
I also think sometimes we can really frame that too from a perspective to say, hey, I know that we really have to bend over and help them today and tonight,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
I'll make sure that maybe next Friday, you
Mhm.
know, especially again, focused on helping the homeowner is
Mhm.
critical. But I also think it's important to focus on the employee, right? And,
Yeah.
asking them, hey, we really need to be there for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But I
Mhm.
certainly know that, you may have other plans. And can you support them the same way
Mhm.
that you're supporting? I'm a big proponent of internal and external customers are equally important to your success. And
Mhm.
I would follow up your framing with how did
Mhm.
we frame the need to help, right? Did
Yeah.
we check in with them first and say,
Mhm.
hey, this is happening, and making sure, right? Because again, I need them to really care about Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So in
Mhm.
order for that to happen, they have to feel like I really care about them too.
Yeah. Otherwise, it just seems hypocritical, right? Otherwise, it seems like a show, and I think it's so important because, um, especially in your industry, Holly. One of the things I've learned is you can only be a phony for so long in an industry where you don't sleep as much as you should or too many hours. You know what I'm saying? Like eventually the mascara comes off, and forget to you know button the
And
top button or whatever. You know what I mean? And eventually it's like if you don't really believe this, it's gonna come out. You know, and so I think that is that's really spot on. Okay, we're gonna do two things here. One is, and we're gonna both do them kind of rocket round style here, because
okay.
there are many different, let's call it like, I don't know, moments that are associated with kind of, let's call it career stages. When we call it career stages, and I'm interested in if you could give us a practical example of how you think leaders could find a way to infuse meaning and purpose and goosebumps, in these moments. So I want to start with the job posting. So how can leaders and businesses, bring meaning and purpose and fulfillment and advertise that as you can get that here in a job posting in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really simple, right? You communicate that we're here to restore people's lives, that you
Hmm.
get to help people at their most, difficult situations that have been impacted by some
Hmm.
type of catastrophic event or some type of water loss or fire loss. And you're really listing the skill sets that you're looking for versus, hey, this is 24/7 and you're gonna have to, like, walk around in raw sewage, right?
Hmm.
When you list a posting, you've got to be able to focus on helping others, the joy of being able to be there for people when they're most vulnerable, because then I think you're gonna get people that wanna come work for you with the right culture, right? Hire for character and culture, don't hire for skills. You can train skills,
Hey, that's the business I'm in. Yeah, totally. Right.
right? It's why we use know-how is to teach the skills, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think when you think about hiring in our environment, we use know-how to teach the skills of, how to fold a piece of laundry or how to pack an item up, right, for safety. That's what the training is for, is to teach the skills. You have to hire for character. You have to hire for how do you show up for other people? Do you want to help other people day in and day out? Do you like the idea of restoring someone's life back after a catastrophic event? Because if those don't align, even if they have all the skill sets, they won't stay very long because they're missing the meaning of the work, right? The why we do this. And if they're missing the why of what we do in the restoration industry, they're not going to stick around that long. I mean, even within our
Yeah.
industry, everyone
Yeah.
has some different processes and procedures that they typically
Mm.
are following, right? And I'm not talking about industry standards for, like structure mitigation and things that I know nothing about. But, I think for most of us, there's processes and procedures depending on your software system that you're utilizing. And those are the tasks that we do. It's not the why. So when you're looking to bring somebody to join look for a culture match, look for a character match, look for a value match, because those are the people that will last for a really long time with your
Mm.
company because they
Mhm.
have meaning day in and day out.
Mm.
Tasks change too.
Mhm.
Like, when I started in the industry, we carried around Thomas Guide map books and we called the office from a payphone. uh, so obviously those tasks don't
Right.
happen anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, right? They hire for the character. You got to connect
Yeah.
on your value, your character, and your culture as a brand.
Yeah. I can see like a first team, post that says like, take care of the customer. Never gets old. Right. Okay. I want to get to the interview. So you're interviewing a candidate, they're sitting there, they're sweating a little bit. How do you help a candidate in an interview understand this is a place where you can find fulfillment and meaning? Like that matters a lot to Gen Zs based on what we've seen.
Yeah, I think it's same.
Mhm.
You're going to share a goosebump moment, right? You're going
Mhm.
to share some of the amazing experiences that they can have while working within your company,
Mm.
whether it's an amazing experience with a coworker or whether
Mhm.
it's an amazing experience out at a loss site. And you
Mm.
have to communicate those. And I
Mhm.
think you also then are going to ask questions around what makes them tick,
Mm.
what gives them joy,
Mm.
right? And I don't mean what tasks do you enjoy, but like where do you find joy? And
Mm.
I think if you take time asking maybe non, the basic like work days are here to here and, can you show up every day? And, I think
Mhm.
sometimes we ask not relevant questions during an interview
Yeah.
instead of saying, what do you do for fun?
Mm.
Right? What keeps you entertained? What
Yeah.
gives you joy in your life?
Mm.
Right? What are some of the
Mhm.
things that matter?
Yeah.
You know, I think
Yeah.
that's what you're going to pick up on, right? What do you
Yeah.
do outside of work?
Mhm.
What's happening in your life? And I think as you get to know somebody through the course of an interview, you
Mhm.
can feel off of them whether or not you're really connecting, especially when you're telling your story, right?
Mhm.
Your story about connecting with a homeowner and getting an opportunity. We went out on this insane loss where water,
Mm.
right? The sprinklers went off and it flooded 17 levels of an apartment complex. And one of the homeowners, right, that we got to connect with and take care of her belongings, she told us this amazing story about it's like a German little baby outfit that like it's a little, I don't even know what they call them,
Like
Hefeweizen or something.
lederhosen or some little baby
Lederhosen,
lederhosen?
thank you. This little tiny like leather Lederhosen outfit, right? And that it belonged to like her like 7 generations ago, and
What?
every firstborn child wore it as like their coming home outfit. And, we got to take that and clean it and restore it. We actually put it in this really cool frame and delivered it
Wow.
back. And she like broke down in tears. And
Wow.
I, I just, those are the types of moments that you'll get to experience here.
Yeah.
Now, if they took from that nasty water damage pouring from the sky,
Yeah. Yeah.
right, then they're missing the water.
Mhm. Yeah,
But if
German people
they
wearing spandex, you're like, "You're missing it."
Yeah, but instead, if they hear you telling this amazing story about helping this, older woman really recover from this loss, it was,
Yeah.
you know, they maybe are a good cultural fit for you.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's so interesting. I mean, I kinda nerd out on, demographer reports on, like, ho the changing motivations of, say, of a generation, and, it's interesting how it's so common within especially the young workers coming in that, their life is absent of what we would call, like, traditional sources of meaning. They don't very low historically low, participation in, like, faith communities or volunteer communities or, oftentimes a lot of young people, sometimes their last 2 years of high school or on Zoom, I mean, and so they really in a sense, feel kind of like a shadow, kind of floating around, and, you and I were talking earlier about, like, there's, like, some soul, there's some roots in what you're describing, and I think, Holly, that I think that if a person even just experienced another human describing, like, a life that includes work like that, I think that's contagious, I mean, you tell me, like, I think.
100%. I mean, we're attracted
Mhm,
to it, right? Like, there's
mhm,
something where you're like, we're attracted to joy and happiness.
mhm,
What we feel it, it's contagious. We want it,
mhm,
right? We want to
mhm,
participate in that. You can tell when somebody is really passionate about what they do, and
mhm,
you're just, there's a natural attraction to it.
mm,
And I think when you're thinking about attracting talent and winning over workers, you're
mhm,
really getting that opportunity to really bond with them on those opportunities in our industry. And
mm,
they feel that and get to see that and think, gosh,
mm.
although every day may not be roses and butterflies and sunshine, there's
Yeah,
something about connecting that is part of
yeah,
our natural DNA, and our natural
yeah,
desire is to connect with others. And this will give you that opportunity, if even for a week, right?
yeah,
Because, it's not every homeowner that I've connected with do I still have a relationship with, right?
yeah,
It's not that, but like my employees and my coworkers, um, I have some employees that haven't worked for us for over 10 years that I still talk to and
That's
communicate
awesome.
with on a regular basis.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I
You
think
know,
it gives ability to
it's
connect for sure.
it connects, and as you're describing that, the word that comes to mind is, and I think it's one of the most underutilized tools in staff retention, which is the power of anticipation, right? I mean, I experience it in my own life. Like I experience it in my life. Like I've got young kids. I've got a smart, brilliant, hardworking wife who knows who's frayed, at many times, and we just got back from a study vacation, and I'll tell you, the anticipation of that vacation, I think actually, like pound for pound, like offered more satisfaction than probably the vacation itself. And I can just imagine an environment and a workplace that is infused with stories of meaning and purpose and fulfillment. Maybe your onboarding process is a little chaotic, or maybe, or maybe there's some bumps along the way, or maybe the first 30 or 60 days are just rougher than normal. You came in during a particular bad, loss season. Um, but the anticipation of wanting to have a story like my interviewer told me, it's got to be a retention mechanism, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking
Hmm.
about that too, like other things that
Hmm.
offices can do or businesses can do.
Hmm.
One of the offices that one of our first team offices I just visited
Hmm.
actually took like the surveys and the Goosebump Moments and created a wall, right? They call it
Oh,
their Goosebump wall, right? Where they post them all up. And so think about it. If you have somebody coming in to interview and
yes.
you get an opportunity to be like, this is what we call our Goosebump wall. And these are all amazing stories about different employees getting these
Yeah.
incredible moments with the homeowner in
Yeah.
restoring their items. I think
Yeah.
it also like, oh, I want to make it on the Goosebump wall, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
There's
those
got to
are
be.
other like tips and tricks.
It's super smart, right? I mean, with 50 locations, I'm sure like we could fill a podcast with just you saying like, my team is smart. Listen to this, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so just the way my mind works though, I'm like, golly, there's got to be a wallpaper that would be perfect for that wall. You know what I'm talking about?
Right? There probably is. Right. And I think about that. Like, I
Yeah.
also get an amazing opportunity to go into other contractors' offices all the time, right? Because they're our
Yeah.
clients at
Yeah.
First Team.
Yeah.
And so if I'm walking into one of our mitigation or
Mhm.
construction or pack out companies that, gives us work,
Mhm.
I get to see that same alignment at times, right? Where they
Hmm.
have their success stories or their success surveys
Hmm.
sharing those opportunities. And then you know that you culturally align with one of your partners,
Hmm.
which is even better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Okay. Hey, you're an easy person to talk to, Holly. I enjoy talking with you. So I got to reel it in here because we've got the power round here. So, think about, maybe we're on stage wrapping up a panel, fireside chat with Holly. And so I've got 4 questions. So first question, what's one thing that you'd recommend leaders stop doing? That can really keep staff from finding a sense of meaning and fulfillment in work. It's like, you stop doing this. You're just killing your staff's ability to create meaning and fulfillment in work.
Yeah. So, it's interesting that you asked that because I think there's lots of things that we could probably stop doing.
Hmm.
Um, I would say being present, right? How critical. So stop being not present. And what
Hmm.
I mean by that is stop focusing on just yourself
Hmm.
and whether it's you're having a communication with an employee and they're trying to tell you about an experience and in your
Hmm.
mind you're like, well, I've got a flight to catch or emails to return, and maybe
Yeah.
you check your phone. I think if you could stop and just take the pause with your staff and
Hmm.
ask them, right,
Yep.
how their day was, and stop asking them, hey, did we get that job done?
Yeah.
Right? Making it more
Hmm.
about them, I think, is something that we could really, like, stop being distracted when you're trying to
Mm.
interact with your people.
Yeah. It I, so I spend a lot of time on Zoom and virtual meetings and stuff like that, and, uh, that's very good advice. And I have to live your advice out. I have started maybe the last couple years. I've started a practice that I've started showing my hands in a conversation. So I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay, right."
Like
I just found it's like
typing.
if you can see my hands, you know that I'm like I'm here. At least I'm more here than but that's
Right,
good
I'm not over
advice.
here on my phone.
I know, and I'm terrible at that sometimes. So yeah, it's good advice. Next question. So one if there's one thing that you'd recommend, now I know we talked about being present, but is there one thing that you'd recommend leaders start doing to enable staff to develop a sense of meaning and fulfillment in their work?
Yeah, so I would say focusing on your goosebump moments, whatever those
Mm,
look like, right?
mm,
And really making that your rock per se, that is the
mm,
focus of your business.
mm,
When you think of customer satisfaction and joy,
mm,
whatever your kind of rock is or goosebump moment, making that the focus of everything that when you're communicating. I think
mm,
that's the best way to kind of go about that is,
mm,
when you start a meeting off, have somebody share your goosebump story of the week.
mm,
Find the meaning of what you're doing, the
mm.
why, so to speak, and making everything that you do revolve around that, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be your first sense check as a business and making that the
Mm.
focus so that then your employees make that the focus.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Every time I do these kind of conversations, I'm like, I'm gonna start doing that. That's a pretty good piece of advice. And
We all
you know, yeah, yeah. You know what, Holly? I live in a part of the world where they produce a lot of oil, and safety is like super, super important. I mean, it's important everywhere, but like it's like super important. And something that's very popular in my neck of the woods is called in a meeting you have a safety moment, right? And we're gonna have a safety moment. It's important. I'm and But my brain, I'm like Holly is talking about like having meaning moments to start meetings. And so our meeting's going to kick off with a little meaning moment or with our goosebumps moment,
yeah.
and because so anyways, I think that's really uh, yeah. I've learned over the years that you know there was kind of a mentor of mine, and he would say of the many smart things he would say simplicity is complexity resolved. And he would say just because something is simple doesn't mean it's silly. Sometimes something that's simple is there is just an enormous amount of complexity that's been compressed into one concept. And I think what you're describing in terms of starting a meeting to set the tone by having someone share a goosebumps moment, I mean, it sets the whole tone for the meeting. I mean, how do you be how do you be a rotten egg after someone tells a story that's so heart there's so much heart in that story? It's like, well, I was thinking about being a stinker, but you know what? That's pretty good. That's
Maybe not
that's
now.
that's pretty good. Just a pretty good story. I got something in my eye, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, okay. Next question. Um, if you could encourage leaders in the industry to make a long-term investment, a long-term investment in something that's going to pay dividends for years to come, to be able to create an environment that connects work to meaning, what would that investment be?
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously from a long-term investment standpoint, I
Hmm.
think it's important to really think about your culture as a brand
Mm,
and then ensure that you're training to that. So, what are
mm,
your training techniques? Do you train them on focusing on the meaning or are you
mm,
training to focus on the task?
mm,
And can you intertwine meaning into the task?
mm,
Right. So, if part of one of the things they have to do is update the claim file, right? Push a button, stop a
mm.
clock, whatever it is, because we all kind of
Yeah.
live in an SLA type
Totally.
worlds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where is the button for the meaning?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to just think how you can implement that and then make sure that you can
Mm.
repeat that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because it's easy as you grow to
Mm-hmm.
get too far removed from that, that
Mm-hmm.
you forget that the person that was hired last week is
Mm-hmm.
missing that kind of guidance and training. And
Mm-hmm.
so make sure whatever, whether it's the know how training platform, that there's
Mm-hmm.
meaning in the items that you're discussing. It's not push this button, cross this T, dot that I, but explaining in the midst of that why,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why do we do that? What's the
Yeah.
meaning that we're going to get from that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really that's really important. No, I think that's really important. And so let me bring us to a close here, Holly, with one last question. Um, you're on stage, leaders in the industry, um, and the audience is super bought into what you're saying because this is very important. I think it's very timely. Um, the research we've done has said like, yeah, this is like golden advice. But if you could teach leaders one thing about attracting and retaining talent in this industry, what would it be?
So I'm going to steal this idea. I'm a great stealer of ideas. Um,
Mhm,
we have a franchise in Salt Lake City, Utah, and Ryan Fish
mm,
presented at our conference a year ago.
mm.
And he presented a concept that's not new. I think there's even a book about it. So it's not, he stole it from somebody, I guess I would say. And it's called
Yeah.
Choose Hard, right?
Mm,
And I think when I think of leaders is that we get to choose hard, right? You get to
mm,
choose your hard every day, whether you want to choose the hard to eat healthy and work out, or you want to choose the hard that's being overweight,
mm,
right? Choose hard to have a great marriage and have great communication and dedicate time and focus on a marriage, or choose hard by maybe going through a divorce. And I think in work, we get to do the exact same thing. It's not easy to show meaning day in and day out.
mm,
It's not easy to like focus on your employees and truly care and invest in them, invest in their training, invest in their education. It's hard. But the
mm.
alternative of dealing with lack of retention and a lot of turnover is also hard. So I guess my one advice for fellow leaders would be pick what hard you want to do because it's all hard. You just get to choose which hard you want. So if you want to create this amazing culture and you want a company that has long time, happy, satisfied employees, you're going to have to choose that hard. And it's
Mm.
not going to be easy, but it's doable. And so I just think about that as a leader every day. None of it's easy. So just choose your hard on what type of environment you want to create for your employees. And do you want to help restore their lives, the lives of your customers, and figure out how to choose that level of hard. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Holly, you can't see them, but I have goosebumps. All right.
I love that. I have to tell you that when Ryan spoke, not only did I get goosebumps, but I'm pretty sure I bawled at least 3 or 4 times during his presentation. So I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's a beautiful way to close, Holly. Thanks for being generous. I've had the pleasure of being able to spend time with you, in person and be able to profess that, you're this is genuinely who you are. I don't know if I can speak on behalf of your organization, but if they gave me, this random momentary proxy, thank you for being a leader who cares about creating an employment experience, and thanks for being a leader who chooses the hard of bringing your heart to work. Because I know that you've had a lot of impact over the last 28 years, Holly. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you, Leighton, and thank you. I have to say that we've been connected with Know How for quite some time now from a training perspective, and I probably speak for everyone in the restoration industry when I say these surveys that you do and the data that you gather for our industry really does make us better because I think most of us as business owners don't always know, right? It's a little bit of a trial and error over the years of what's working and what's not working. And
Mm,
I love the fact that at least like winning with workers, you went out into the marketplace and really helped
mm,
us realize like these are the things that if we want to hire and retain great talent, that we need to be focused on as a business. And I think it's just a great reminder of that. So keep doing
Yeah.
what you're doing. I know that we all really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Hey, it's our pleasure.
Well, there you have it, folks. What a great conversation with my friend Holly, someone who's really learned how to connect work with meaning, not only in her own life, but she's learned how to show those that she leads, those in her charge, how to make that connection for themselves to fuel more passion and, frankly, more meaning in the work that they do on a day-to-day basis. So timely, so important, and so necessary to win with the workforce today. This is the Restoration Playbook Podcast, where we get into the weeds with the top operators. So tune in as we continue to dig into our book, Winning with Workers, to understand how workers are responding to companies that have these principles at work that can be repeated, that can be actually emulated in your business. This makes me think of an episode that we recorded recently with Beth from Seaside Restoration, another company that's doing such a great job connecting work with meaning in their workforce. Check it out. It's a killer episode, super practical, and I highly recommend it. Now, one of the things that Holly touched on is how important industry research is, and we believe that at Know How. So I can't let the cat out of the bag, but I will tell you that we have a big announcement coming up at the Restoration Industry Convention, the RIA 2024 event coming up soon. So you're going to want to pay attention, because we are going to be rolling out a new opportunity, a new collaboration to illuminate more data, more research in this industry, and we're excited to share that with you. So stay tuned and check out the Restoration Playbook Podcast as we continue to deep dive in how leaders in this industry are generating winning output with today's workforce.
Know How is an intuitive, mobile-first application designed to rapidly onboard new hires, upskill staff, and provide on-demand expert guidance for whatever task is next. Home to your company's proven methods, Know How ensures everyone has the skills they need to get the job done right. With time-saving features that make it a breeze for management to build, maintain, and translate standard operating procedures. It's time to ditch your outdated operation binders and dated, difficult-to-search systems. With Know How in their pocket, your staff have the how-to they need wherever the day takes them. Our new process creator makes drafting new SOPs faster than ever, helping you customize, edit, and share your time-tested methods and processes with ease.